Welcome, Buff fans. I'm joined once again by Matt Smith. And Matt, we've been not consistent with this over the summer because I mean, his schedule is just weird. We're excited, though. I know I am to start doing this regularly. Picking up weekly as the season gets rolling here. But nice to see you again.
Yeah, yeah, it's summer has not let me up off the mat. This has not been like the chill, hang out by the beach summer for me. Had a lot going on. I know you have as well. So yeah, I'm definitely looking to get back into some semblance of normalcy with football again here. You blink and we'll be in training camp. So yeah, I mean, we haven't been necessarily as consistent as we'd like to be, but we've still had some good content out this summer. So I'm glad we've been able to hit some of that stuff despite our crazy schedules.
Yeah, and frankly, this is the time to not be consistent with it. So,
Yeah.
you gotta take that time to breathe a little bit. Speaking of camp, I mean, it's the 15th of July right now, and as we do this camp, their first practice is 13 days from now. They report in 12 days on the 27th. The first practice is the 28th, and so it's gonna be here before we know it. And last week was really that sort of unofficial kickoff to the season. That's how the media looks at it when there's media day. You weren't down there, but I know you were paying attention to everything going on down there. The Buffs five representatives, well, six, including Coach Prime and five players down in Frisco, Texas at the Star. And first off, I will say the commissioner Brett Yormark he was kind of when he was doing a presser, he was asking people reporters like, well, what do you think of this one compared to previous years? And I actually went up to him afterwards. I know, I've chatted with him enough that I feel like I can do this, and went up to him afterwards and I said, hey, this is my third straight year going to Big 12 Media Days, and this was the best one as far as the
Nice.
venue. 2 years ago, it was at AT&T where the Cowboys play. Last year was at Allegiant Stadium where the Raiders play in Vegas. And then this year was at the Star in Frisco, which is the Cowboys practice facility. Which have you ever been there?
No,
Okay,
no, no, no.
I didn't know if you'd ever been there, but it's crazy. I mean, it's high school games are played there, so there's seats in there, and it's like a little mini stadium and just a crazy complex. But it felt big inside, not big outside. It was easy to get to, and actually the weather wasn't too bad. So all
I
in
was gonna
all,
say.
I thought it. I mean, it was like 85, 90 and rainy, so it was really humid, but it
Yeah.
was not 103 and humid like it was 2 years ago when I was there.
Well, that's good. That's good. I mean, look, I can see all that stuff on video. And Brian, you didn't even get to ask a question. So I feel like I dodged a bullet not going down there and got to evade Texas one time. We've got two trips to Texas here coming up.
Well, that's the thing is, yeah, what you're referring to obviously is in Coach Prime's presser. Didn't get a chance. I didn't talk to him at all,
Yeah.
literally, because he was not there very long. Showed up for his press conference, and we get 15, 20 minutes, and really, the hands start flying up quickly, and the moderator, they don't know who anybody is, whether you're the beat writer or not, and they just look at a hand and they all right, you next, whatever. And once you start, you're two questions in, you're like, okay, I'll raise my hand. You look around, there's like eight other hands. You're like, forget it.
Yeah.
I'm not getting the mic on this one. And so in 15, 20 minutes, I'm like, you know what? Let's let all the people that don't normally talk to him ask questions, and we'll get him local press conferences here coming up. So but honestly, Matt, it was good to see him because we've heard not much. We don't know the details of what's going on with his health, but clearly he's been dealing with something all summer. It was good to see him, honestly, just to see him looking good. He sounded like Coach Prime, his usual confidence and everything was there. I thought he looked good, sounded good, and it was good to see him.
Thought so too. Thought so too. Definitely has been a tough summer, whatever he's going through. At least that's what it seems like from the outside looking in. This is one of those situations where, normally if there's a story going on behind the scenes, you and I would dig a little, but not on something like this, not with a personal medical health issue. So nobody really knows what's going on, and he didn't really care to share any information, which, I didn't expect him to either. But it was good to see him. Again, for him, we talked about normalcy for us getting back to football season, especially for somebody that's dealing with a health issue. That's extremely important. And I think that was a really good first step for him. He clearly has been leaning on his support system quite heavily this
Yeah.
summer. Michael Irvin showed up to media days with him, and he's had a cavalcade of visitors, and he talked about how the opposing Big 12 coaches and Brett Yormark, the commissioner, have been calling and checking on him frequently. So I imagine whatever it was or is that he's dealing with. I don't think we're going to get an answer to that until maybe when the time is right, if ever. So whatever he's dealing with, I just hope that everything's going well. And
Yeah.
he's not in Boulder yet, so I know that there's a little bit of a break. So maybe that indicates that he's still dealing with some stuff. I'm not exactly sure. I don't want to read too much into things, but he'll be here very soon. And certainly, I mean, I don't know how much he's been here, if at all, this summer.
Yeah, I don't think he's been here at all. I think he's been in Canton, Texas most of the time. I thought it was actually, to me, a good sign too. We don't know this at the time, but when you go back and watch the well-off media video, that they left straight from Frisco to go to the airport, and Coach Prime said he was going to film a commercial. That to me is a
Yeah,
positive sign as well, that he was feeling up to. That's a lot on the schedule if you haven't been, or if you haven't been feeling well, if you've been sick. So for him to go from media day
yeah.
to flying out to go, I think it was Los Angeles, it looked like they went to, I'm not sure, but for him to fly out to go and film a commercial, he must have been feeling pretty good. So those are all positive signs to me. I'm not worried about him not being here
No.
this summer, especially right now. I mean, I don't think anybody's really there right now. This is the break for the players, and I'm sure he's going to be there when the time comes. And on the 27th they report, I fully expect he will be there and leading that team meeting. And I'm sure he'll be there even before then, getting things, getting all the ducks in the row for fall camp. So I'm not too worried about that.
Yeah, as far as takeaways from what he actually said, I didn't think there was anything too significant to take away because obviously we've talked about this on this podcast. When you get a lot of national people that don't have the opportunity to talk to him a lot, you get a lot of the questions that are reruns, kind of, rinse and repeats there that don't really provide a ton of insight. However, he did mention that he's still awaiting answers from Mike Shermer and Byron Leftwich about potentially joining the staff.
Mike
You and I have
Zimmer,
t What did I say?
Shermer,
Mike
Mike
Shermer.
Shermer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mike Shermer. Mike Zimmer. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty
yeah,
close if you think about it, Shermer and
right.
Zimmer.
Yeah,
Still awaiting those questions, so we'll see if Zimmer continues. I think maybe he was doing some consulting in Dallas. I'm not exactly sure what the situation is there with him. It sounds like Coach Prime is trying to push him to take a position here, but maybe he's dragging his feet or something. So the Byron Leftwich one is a little bit different. I thought that one might have been figured out by now because he was there on the field in spring ball in team gear, and there was. I think didn't even Coach Prime mention it back then about potentially having a coach coming onto staff that he can't really talk about right now, and
well, he mentioned
come
he mentioned the two, and those are the two. I mean, those have
right.
been, so those are the two he was referencing based on everything I could find. He didn't say it at the time, but
Right.
both of these have been in the works really um, for months now, and neither one of them is a done deal. So
Zimmer probably for years. I think he's tried to get
yeah,
Zimmer for a couple seasons now. So we'll see what ends up happening. But those two not officially on the staff. I mean, would it be nice to have them? Yes, of course. I mean, with their football brains, but I think their staff is pretty well set, either way. It would be nice to have Byron Leftwich there, though, for the development of a young quarterback. I think that would be a really, really important ad for them.
yeah,
Um, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens and how it plays out, certainly. But outside of that, they're really, outside of him sharing that, um, I did find it funny that he kind of took a, pot shot a little bit at Joey Maguire. He was teasing him, but it was like a, tongue in cheek because Texas Tech has just been spending through the nose on their roster. And it came out today. I think I saw today on social media, 28 million is the reported price tag on Texas Tech's roster for this year, which is
yeah,
second in the country reportedly to Texas. So the Big 12 has had an infusion of cash specifically in Lubbock, Texas, and he definitely took a little shot at Joey saying, "Hey, you throw some of those dollars my way so I can get some of that talent." Because,
yeah,
following up a little bit later in the press conference, he also brought up how college football should have a salary cap. And you and I have broached the subject of the House revenue sharing agreement and the settlement and what that looks like. And certainly, I think we can all understand that the one thing that's consistent in college sports is, and in all sports really, but specifically in college sports, is you're going to look for an edge. At least most coaches are going to look for an edge, maybe a loophole, maybe not necessarily blatant cheating, but certainly some sort of gray area, right? And Coach Prime
yeah,
is really by the book because he knows that if he were to go that route, I mean, he would be, ridiculed endlessly, and they would make it a federal case for him, to do any of these other things that maybe some of these other coaches are doing. So when you're really trying to keep your nose clean, it probably feels like you're at a pretty big disadvantage this summer as far as the NIL dollars getting thrown around.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a shot at Joey McGuire. I think it was more of a
No, it was a shot
they're
at college football.
right, more of a
Yeah.
college football shot.
Yeah.
He and Joey are pretty tight, I
Oh,
think,
I
and
know.
so
I know. Yeah.
but yeah, it was kind of one of those funny moments of like, hey man, give me some
Hmm.
of that money that they clearly don't have at Colorado. They need some of that, but yeah, all in all, I thought for me, good media day. Coach Prime, we didn't. You're right, we didn't learn a ton, but it's clear that he's confident in this team, but we've known that.
Yeah.
He believes in this team. It's also clear that they have not settled on a starting quarterback, and to bring both, um, you you really had to bring two or none. I've never seen two go down there, so I thought there'd be none. But for me, it was great. I loved catching up with Julian Lewis and also Caden Salter. I will say this though, that I still believe Caden Salter is going to be the starting quarterback. And for me, I think part of why you bring both of those guys down there is we know how Coach Prime operates as far as giving his guys opportunities to be in the spotlight and things like that. I think this was an opportunity, even if Julian Lewis is not going to be the starter, feel some of that media pressure here at 17 years old. Get that experience because you're going to need it at some point in the future. So I think that was part of it too. But I still think Caden Salter's the guy. They may not
Yeah.
know, they may not have settled on it totally, but I think he's the guy.
I think there's some politicking going on for sure in that situation. Look, he landed a five-star quarterback who was one of the highest rated recruits in the country, and certainly part of what he told him then was, "Yeah, you'll come in and have a chance to compete." I think we all
Mhm.
understand right now, specifically those of us who have been around. Caden's further along. He is,
Mhm.
as he should be. I mean, he had experience playing college football. Julian Lewis should be going into his senior year of high school.
Yeah.
So I think he's saying that stuff to keep up appearances, to keep Julian happy. And look, maybe there is a legitimate open competition. I kind of see it as, yeah, there's an open competition. Go beat him. You beat him out, then yeah, there was a competition. But, I think he's starting from obviously a much less experienced place. But I do think, as Coach Prime alluded to, I believe it was him that alluded to it. Maybe he was on the ESPN desk. Having Juju down there just kind of gets him assimilated, kind of experienced. This will be the future face of his program if all things
Mhm.
go according to plan. So get him ready, to understand what that environment looks like. And the other part of this is that, the one thing that we really haven't talked about a lot when it comes to quarterbacks is Shadur's durability probably was his most underrated trait.
Right.
I would say because of how spectacular he was as a passer, the fact that he just didn't leave the game was a miracle, a blessing in disguise. When there were many times over the last couple of years they played teams where the backup did have to come in for a snap here or there, or their starter was down. So you'll probably end up needing probably a couple guys, I would think. At some point, you would think
Mhm.
that not just their starter will play. And then, there's also that part of it where, look, Caden Salter's a running quarterback, and he's not this huge, imposing force. That comes with a high injury risk as well. And
Yeah.
and so you get hit one time, somebody's got to come into the game. Maybe in a situation like that, they would lean on Ryan Staub because of the experience and just throwing him into the fire. But maybe with a full week to prepare, they would go to a guy like Juju. I'm not sure how they'd handle that
Yeah.
either way, but I do know that at least I believe that the main impetus for bringing him was the experience that he would get by going down there.
Yeah, I think so. And you're right. At some point, he is going to need to be ready. And I agree with you. I think what you're saying is that if if uh, if Salter's your guy and he gets dinged up, you probably throw in stop. But if
Right.
Salter gets hurt in game five and he's going to be out for a month, you probably throw Julian
Yeah.
Lewis in there.
Yeah.
And so Julian may need to be the guy at some point this year. And so you want him ready for those things. So
Hmm.
I still think Salter's the guy. And you're right. He's not an imposing figure, but neither is Julian Lewis.
No.
Neither one of them is. But yeah, and you're right that they're going to need multiple quarterbacks because it is rare you go through a season with one guy. I mean, Steven Montez, did it for a couple of years for the Buffs, but in between Montez and Shador, you
Yeah, it was
saw,
a revolving door.
yeah,
Yeah.
you just saw different quarterbacks, and some of it was ineffective because of ineffective play, but some of it was injuries as well. But yeah, I think you're going to need multiple quarterbacks, and Ryan Staub's kind of the forgotten guy. I like him as a backup. I think that that's a quality guy as your backup to go in there and handle um, a series, a game or two, things like that. So I think their quarterback room is really healthy right now. I think we've talked about it before, Matt, but I mean, is this the deepest room they've had in
Yeah.
years?
Yeah, definitely is. The other part of this is that the offense for Caden and for Juju and Ryan is going to be a little bit different, right? Just
Yeah,
because of the nature of how they're going to do things. And I believe even Pat Shermer spoke about that during spring ball. So look, we'll see how it goes. Um, but I think one thing's clear, and even RK asked Coach Prime down there in Dallas about if he would be comfortable if both guys played. He said yes. I don't believe him. That's just going to be my thing because the old adage, if you have two, you don't have one. So maybe that's the way it goes. I'd be surprised at that
you mean
position.
a rotation?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't. I am not a proponent of that. I'm not a fan of that.
yeah,
If you have to do that, it's because you don't have one guy that you trust. And Caden should be a good enough thrower of the football where there's no reason that they would need to go to Juju.
yeah,
It if that circumstance arises, then I would just go out there and say that they're probably not headed for the best season. Would you agree with that?
yeah. I would think so. I think
Yeah.
yeah.
I
It
can't
means
think of too many situations where you've had successful teams play multiple quarterbacks. Not like,
yeah,
throughout the course of a season, but like as a plan to go dual QB. I just
yeah.
can't think of a ton that, none really pop. I'm sure there are some. And if you have good examples, put them in the comments because it'd be fun to think back, but none come to mind right away.
Well, generally, if you've got those two, that second one's going because the other one's ineffective. At least it's almost
In
like a
some
pitch.
way, shape, or form.
It's like
Yeah.
a pitcher situation. It's like, uh, you know, Alabama a few years ago. Jalen Hurts was fine,
Right.
but he had an ineffective game, and so it's like that starting pitcher that yeah, he doesn't have it today, and so you go with Tua, right?
Yeah. Or
Or
maybe like Ohio State, right? Like Cardale Jones or like
yeah,
Braxton Miller or like
yeah,
some hybrid JT Barrett like running situation. If that's the plan, but we're talking about like legitimately two guys
right,
manning the system, not just one guy being a Taysom Hill type gadget guy.
yeah,
So even though I think they could have tried that with Walter Taylor last year at times. I
yeah,
thought that would have been fun to watch occasionally because he could motor
yeah.
for a big dude like that. Although ball security is an issue. So anyway,
But I
yeah,
will say this too,
very
Matt.
healthy quarterback room.
I would say this that those Alabama and Ohio State situations we're talking about are very different because
Yes, of course.
you're absolutely loaded everywhere around the
Yeah,
quarterback with NFL talent.
no question.
And while I think this is a good roster, it's not an Ohio State Alabama roster.
No,
So this is not the roster you want to be doing multiple, quarterbacks with.
no.
You want one guy to seize the job and be the guy. So I think that's the point we're making. I think both of them are good quarterbacks. Both of them, when Julian gets his chance to play at some point, he's going to be good. I think Caden Salter is pretty good. I think this is his year, and then I look forward to Julian Lewis in the future. So, uh, yeah. Anything else on the quarterbacks before we move on?
Yeah, I'll say this: high expectations for Caden Salter.
Mhm.
Really, around the country from different college football writers, I've seen pretty much unanimously them all list him as the one quarterback to watch to have a breakout season. Which, I mean, we would count our lucky stars to see that happen. I'm just going to need to see it happen at this level, right? It's always a process. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't,
Yeah.
especially at that position. So it's a lot of their success this year, in my opinion, will be dictated by how well he can play consistently. Because, with all due respect for Juju, I'm not gonna even consider him being a part of the equation until we're told that he is, and that's just
Yeah.
my own belief. That's nothing against him, but he's 17. That's just the only 17-year-old I can remember playing quarterback in college at all was Khalil Tate, and that was his freshman year because they were hurt, and that was at the end of the year. And he was kind of a gadget runner too when they used him. So
Yeah.
that would be the only example that I could even think of that.
The one I can think of is JT Daniels with USC, who
Oh
also
yeah,
graduated a year early from high school and
yeah,
was the number one quarterback recruit in the country and had a pretty
didn't go all
solid
that
year.
well for him.
He had a solid freshman year, then got injured first game of that second year, and then
Yep.
bounced around and things like that. So,
It was
but yeah,
solid. Yeah, it was solid.
it was solid. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, he also had, it was again, it was USC's roster.
USC, yeah.
So, him on a different roster, a lesser roster, probably doesn't look so good. So,
Right.
yeah. Also at media day the other day was Jordan Seaton.
Mm,
You had Alejandro Mata and DJ McKinney. It was great to catch up with all those guys. I mean, awesome young men. I mean, I will say the one thing, and you and I have talked about this before, I believe, is that great young men that Coach Prime has brought into this program, and
yes.
there's so many, well-spoken and mature and um, just great young men that Coach Prime has brought in this program. I think that's an underrated aspect of the Coach Prime program is, you know, how good these young men are. I mean, we've been around a lot of college football players that, some of them, and they're not great at media for whatever reason. They're not comfortable with it, whatever. These guys are ready to go, and they're mature and well-spoken guys.
It's almost as if they're, smart, fast, tough, disciplined with character.
Somebody should coin that
Yeah.
phrase.
That's pretty good. That would be a good thing to throw in there for coach speak, don't you think?
Yeah,
Yeah.
throw
But
that
they
on the
are. They're
wall.
all they're all, very kind. I enjoy interacting with everybody really that he's brought in. They're similar to what Tad Boyle does for basketball. He has always had a great track record of recruiting high character guys, and I would say the same about Coach Prime. And if you turn out not to be, your future here probably doesn't, look very
Yeah.
long, or at least have a lot of, shelf life.
Yeah. Yeah, I tweeted this the other day, but Jordan Seaton already is a top 10 or top five interview for me in my time covering CU.
Oh,
He's
he's the
just
best.
awesome. Yeah, I mean, he was great as a freshman last year. He was great the other day. He was funny, during our interview. I mean, I asked him towards the end, I was like, because he was talking about how the grind, he's been working really hard and hardly any days off. And I said, tell me something that you do to get away from the grind, to get your mind off it. And he kind of lit up and he goes, "Oh," me and Draylon Miller live in the same neighborhood, and we just started going for walks. And
I
they just
love that.
walk and talk. And he goes, "Hold on a second." He just like walks off. You can see on the camera, like he just walks off, like, Where's he going?"
Yeah.
And he went to grab his phone. He wanted to show me how many miles they've been walking together and
Oh,
walking and
that's nice.
talking. And, you
Yeah.
know, and just he's a personable young man. He's an awesome young man. That guy has been working super hard.
Yeah.
And you look at his body, and it's different. I mean, he was really good as a true freshman last year.
Yeah.
He is different now, and he's down to 308, or I think he's down. I think he was higher. He was bigger than that in the spring, but he said he wants to get to 315, add a little bit of muscle before the season starts. But he looks trim. I mean, he
Yeah,
showed
he
me
does.
a run that he recently did, a mile and a half run. And big guys don't like to run. He said it, but he is trim and he's working hard.
Yeah, he never was one of those guys that I thought was too out of shape either. Like
No,
he
no,
had
no,
to
no.
transform his body a little bit, but it wasn't like, oh, overnight overhaul. Not like something like Chauncey Gooden probably has to go through, not to
Yeah.
call anybody out, but there's just different body types at that age when you're
You
playing
know,
that position.
honestly, a great example from the past would be Casey Roddick. Do you remember
Yeah, yeah,
when Casey Roddick came into CU? He was like 380, 390,
yeah.
and really over the course of 2, 3 years at CU, dropped down to just a little over 300 and became a really good guard to the point that he transferred to Florida State and started at Florida State. So
Yep,
on the really good Florida State team 2 years ago. So
yep.
so yeah, Seaton's never been that. To your point.
Yeah, Seaton's never been that. And when we first met him, my very first impression, I could see him in 15 years as a guy who's a 10-time All-Pro.
Hmm.
He's got everything, like
Yeah,
everything. He's like the Travis of offensive linemen to me. You know what I mean? Just a rare breed. The type of person that when you think, what should a Hall of Fame offensive lineman look like that's the type of person you think of. Incredibly bright, incredibly kind. A lot of those guys, it's interesting. Offensive linemen, especially when comes to the NFL. I mean, you got to be a little bit different to play in the trenches because
yeah.
that is just constant
Mhm.
war. But for being such a nasty dude, he's a big teddy bear, Jordan. So I've also thoroughly enjoyed covering him. I look forward to seeing what it looks like as he grows more and more into this leadership role. Because I think by the time he ends up leaving CU, it's gonna look really good. I think he's
Yeah,
getting there, and I think over the course of the next year and the year after, look, not having Shadur, and Shiloh and some of those guys around is gonna be a big difference for this group. And we talked to George Hegeman, who's their co-offensive line coach, one of them, and he's also, what is it, the director of leadership, something or other. I can't
Yeah, something
remember
like
the
that.
official
Hmm.
title that he was hired at last year. But one of the things that you and I have talked about and that I brought up with him in spring ball was just replacing all of your leadership tent poles, because at pretty much every single position across the board, maybe it's not unanimous, but at most of them, you are not only replacing significant contributors and producers, but guys who led that room.
Yeah.
And sometimes producers and leaders are not the same people. So that process will take some time to develop as well. And that's one guy that I look at where I say, that's a glue guy this year. So not just is Jordan Seaton a, pivotal piece as their starting left tackle, is probably the best player on this team, but as far as vibes, locker room, leadership, that is one of the most important voices. And certainly I look forward to seeing how that grows and develops this year.
Yeah, and not just a leader for the offensive line, but a leader for the whole offense and
Hmm.
maybe for the whole team,
Yep.
which is kind of crazy to say as a true sophomore. I mean, he himself is just barely out of high school, so but really impressive young man. Alejandro Mata, it was Mata.
Yeah.
uh,
Great kid.
Coach probably likes to say Mata is Mata, and he's talking about his kicking, but Mata is Mata as far as Mata goes. His personality, always good talking to him. And he mentioned to me, Matt, that he's been working on his consistency and his power. He's really set on he wants to prove that he can kick the long field goals that people don't think he can kick. He said, I kick 50 plus yarders all the time, but I need an opportunity in a game. The longest he's ever attempted is 48, and that was in the bowl game, and he missed it. And the longest he's ever hit is 47. He's like, look,
Cincinnati.
yeah, and he's like, if I'm going to make the NFL, I got to prove I can make the long field goals. He's got the accuracy for NFL. I don't know if he has a leg. He wants to prove it though, and it'll be interesting to see if he ever gets those opportunities because they have Buck Buchanan now, who is pretty solid at those long field goals.
Yeah, we will see what happens. That is one of the situations that fascinates me the most. And because it's been summer, we haven't really talked about it, but there were numerous times in pivotal situations last year where Colorado had to go for it on 4th and long, even though you had Shador, even though you had Travis, because they didn't have a kicker, with a leg strong enough that they felt comfortable with enough to put in
Yeah.
some of those situations. So, again, this is something that we've talked about. If those opportunities present themselves early in the season, you got to try Buchanan early to see what he has. You have to. And then, if by anything else, you just go back to necessity of maybe giving Mata a shot at one of those. I don't know what to say on that one. Very nice young man. Really enjoy talking to him always. He made the one against Cincinnati that was good from 47, would have only been good at like 48 and a half. So I guess it all just depends upon time and score and situation. But early on, there's a reason Coach Prime went and got Buck Buchanan. And yes, part of it was touchbacks, but the other part of it was so that they could maybe have somebody. Now, we talked about if you have two quarterbacks, do you really have one? It's kind of the same with kickers, in my opinion. I know in college they have some different guys, but it's typically never a foolproof system of having a distance kicker and one shorter kicker. So we'll see how it goes. It didn't work out with Jace Feely. We'll see if it works out with Buck Buchanan.
Yeah, I was just about to say there's a reason they brought in Jace Feely too, is because Coach Prime had been with Mata for a year
Yep.
at Jackson State and knew if I need a long field goal, I need somebody else. And they tried Jace Feely. Remember, he was the guy coming out of camp in 23.
Yep.
Didn't have a great start to that year. And then Mata took over, and then last year obviously tore the ACL and so yeah, it didn't work out with Jace. Buck I mean, look, he's kicked a lot of field goals in college. He's kicked some 50 plus yarders, and they got a kicker too. I just did a special teams preview the other day. They've got a high school kicker coming in to hit a 57 yarder.
What's that kid's name? Elliot something?
Elliot Arnold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got a good leg too. Yeah.
So I mean, they got some leg talent there. But Mata, to his credit, he's on track to be the most accurate field goal kicker in CU history.
Yeah, and the one thing that you and I have talked about, and I kind of went off on a little rant, I think earlier this summer, or maybe it was right after the season, was CU has to get back to committing the resources in the kicking and the punting game. With
Yeah.
altitude, it is a natural advantage. And when you have great special teams, you can really flip the field and flip a game on its head, quite
Yeah.
frankly. And
Mhm.
we've seen what it's looked like here with all conference, I mean, was Crosby an All-American?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, with
Should
All-American
have won the
kickers.
Lou Groza award, but didn't.
Yeah, I mean, watching him kick in Folsom was just a different experience than
Right.
anybody I've ever seen kick in
Yeah.
Folsom. So there's no reason why every single year you shouldn't have one of the best special teams, kicking rooms in the country, be it punting and kicking. And I
Mhm.
actually think, I saw Mark Bassett posted some photos of his, I don't know if it was debut or at least a game he was playing in the CFL, the Canadian Football League, with I think it was the Calgary Stampeders.
Yep.
But what we saw at the spring game from Damon Greaves was encouraging that he might even be a better punter than Mark Bassett. So looking forward to seeing what that group can do this year. Certainly one of the most interesting dynamics that I'll have my eye on when the season gets rolling.
Yeah, and I agree. I think this is probably the best special teams that Coach Prime's had in his 3 years,
Oh, definitely.
because you have Buchanan that can now put that ball through the end zone. And I
Yeah.
mean, listen, CU gave up the most kickoff returns in the country last year. Louisiana Tech gave up the second least kickoff attempts. The only one that gave up fewer was Arizona, and Buchanan did that at. I looked up the elevation of I think it's Ruston, Louisiana, where he was kicking, and it's
Five.
like it's like 300 feet.
Yeah.
He's basically doing that at sea level.
Yeah.
Imagine what he's going to do, in Boulder. So it'll be impressive. So let's move on. DJ McKinney was also there, the cornerback that he's getting some love. I mean, preseason All
Yeah.
Big 12, along with Jordan Seaton. It's good to see that because that means that people recognized how good he was last year. He didn't get a lot of attention for postseason awards last year, but people have recognized that actually he's pretty good,
Yeah.
playing opposite of Travis Hunter last year. That young man is impressive as well. I enjoy talking to him. He's going to have a big year, I think.
It's his time to shine. I mean,
Yeah.
he's on center stage now. I
Mhm.
really like DJ McKinney. Really, another really nice young man. I remember when we all got back from New York for the Heisman ceremony, he was one of the few that, or not the few, I mean, he was one of the teammates that went out on that chartered flight that they took out there. And he came back and he said it was inspiring being
Yeah.
in that room watching Travis come in with that trophy. And why can't that be me next year? And so, look, there's a lot of heavy expectation on him. He has played very well, at least since he got to campus. A couple moments, but that's going to happen. It's the nature of the position. However, this is a huge, huge year for him because you look around the country, and I think he has an opportunity to, be a top three, top four guy when you look around college football this season, and that's a year early. So I think ideally you would like to see him have a great season and jump, but at the same time, he could have another year, right?
Yeah. He's got 1 year after
So,
this. Yeah.
so this is a player that could be a foundational piece for you. And I think for DJ, if it's not cut and dry next year, then he probably ought to ride it out for two because corner is one of those positions where I think it actually helps you more if you're a little bit of an older guy at the next level.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to sit behind a little bit, but with all of those reps he's about to get, he got last year playing, alongside Travis. He saw what it looked like. He had a front row seat and if there's one guy I expect to really attack this season, it's him.
Yeah. And look, Coach Prime continues to say he thinks this is a better team than last year. For it to be a better team, DJ McKinney has to have a year where he leaves after this year for the NFL,
Yep.
in my opinion. I mean, he's got to be that good for that defense to be that good because, you know, and I think he will. I think he's that good of a player. He's gotten better every year in college. And, I think he has that type of year. If he does, he should be gone next year. And I would love to see it. If he's not in a draftable position after this year, I think CU didn't have a great year on defense.
Probably not. And the other thing I was going to say is at least over the last 20 years, the list at corner is Travis Hunter and Cheeto Awuzie. And I think, I mean, you and I have talked
Well,
about how
Akella Witherspoon, Isaiah Oliver, you got to throw those
I
guys in
would
there
put
too.
Cheeto second to Travis
I would, but I'm saying,
for his time at CU. Cheeto was better than Akello at
yeah,
CU.
I know. I'm just saying the list. I agree with you, the top two, but I'm saying
That's all I was saying was
Akello and
just the
Isaiah.
top two.
Yeah. Okay.
No,
All right.
hey,
All
they
right.
have
All right.
had some good
Yeah.
corners,
Yeah.
and Delrick Abrams had a really nice season as well.
Yeah.
And look, what's the kid? Makai Blackman ended up playing in the NFL for a little while after
Well,
transferring,
Christian.
and Christian, and then Nico
Yeah.
Reed. And
Yeah.
Nico Reed. So look, they've had some actually pretty talented corners come through here. I'm just talking about I think DJ has the chance to be better than Akello, to be better than Cheeto even, honestly, as a pure
Yeah.
cover corner.
Right.
And the type of year that he would need to have would probably cement him as second on that list. That was, I
Yeah.
think, where I was going with that.
Okay, yeah, I would agree with that. That's actually a good discussion.
Yeah.
That we could almost have a whole show on that because that would be kind of
Yeah.
fun because they have had some good corners and what made Cheeto great actually was when he played in the nickel and he was such a good nickel player. I think he set the record. I don't remember it off the top of my head. Set the record for most TFLs by a
Yeah, he was
DB in CU
ridiculous.
history. He
Yeah.
he was
Yeah.
insane. But man, if you could have a secondary of Travis Hunter and DJ McKinney on the outside and Cheeto as your nickel,
You'd be you'd be pretty sick. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be pretty set. But I agree
Yeah.
with you. I never thought of it, but I think DJ does have that shot to maybe be number two on that list as far as cover corner, pure cover corner that we've seen in the last decade or so. And you're
Yeah,
right,
because
they've had some good ones.
Ken Crawley's also on that list. Greg
Yeah.
Henderson was on that list. They had some pretty solid corners.
Yeah, and yeah, I forgot about Nico Reed. He was pretty solid for his time there, and Christian obviously grew up a little bit at Colorado and became a star at Oregon.
Didn't Nico
Mackay,
just get drafted? I want to
uh,
say he just got drafted. Maybe I'm wrong
I
on
can't
that one.
remember
I'll
if he
have to
did or
look
not,
that up.
but
Okay, go ahead.
yeah, I mean they've had some
Yeah,
good
he's with
ones.
the Chargers now.
He is okay. Um, did he get drafted or was he a free agent?
Oh, good question. I
I didn't
will
think he was
figure that
drafted,
out.
but you're right. I think DJ has that opportunity to become that guy that is right up there. I mean, he's probably going to be in that group. So I'm looking forward to him. Um,
Yeah, he was undrafted. You're
he
right.
was okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it was a great group, honestly, Matt, that came out to media day to represent the Buffs, and it was fun to catch up with everybody. I think that you talk about those leadership tent poles. There's five of them right there, at least four, because
Yeah.
I
One
don't
of the
know. I don't know if
quarterbacks.
two quarterbacks will be there, but
Yeah.
whoever is your starter is one. Seaton, McKinney, and Mata. I think there's at least four right there.
For sure, for sure. And there's some others that didn't make the trip. We've heard of like Zy Chrysler has quickly become one of those guys as
Yeah,
well. And, we'll see how it all looks certainly as training camp gets going. That stuff all comes out in the wash organically.
yeah,
You can't really manufacture those competitions or at least manipulate them. It's typically a pretty honest process.
yeah. Arden Walker is another one of those
Yeah,
that
100%.
I think has established himself there. I think we talked earlier about at media day you either bring two quarterbacks or none in this situation. I think if they bring none, Arden was probably going to be there
Yeah,
because
I mean
yeah,
maybe. I was surprised Coach Prime brought two. That wasn't typically his
yeah,
MO. Typically it's like, hey, you got to flat out earn it before I make you one of the face of the team. But I don't
yeah,
know how much of a choice he has right now. He also understands what the quarterback position is and how much that means. And truthfully, that they didn't have a ton of star power, and bringing Juju
yeah.
there, I think, does help a little bit because that's probably one of the more well-known names on CU's roster this year.
Well, and look, I'm going to give him credit for bringing both because over all the years I've been doing this, I think this last year or this last week was my eighth in-person media day. 2020 obviously
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
over Zoom, but um, there's been tons of quarterback competitions, around the Pac-12 and now the Big 12. And usually when there's a competition, that coach is not bringing the quarterback. He's
Yep.
bringing an offensive lineman and a punter or something like that, which I know CU's done as well. But he's bringing other people. I've never seen two. So I give Coach Prime credit for bringing both and saying, look, we're competing, and here they both are. Go talk to them.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. 100%. And that's why they were there, right? And now
Yeah,
we get to see in about 2 weeks the process start to see. I mean, look, I we can talk about it as an open quarterback competition until it really proves to be that for me. I'm gonna just assume that Caden's the guy.
yeah,
That's me. You don't have to approach it that way out there.
I am.
But I will say, again, I've been thinking more and more about what it would take to have a successful season for those guys, and certainly Caden being, one of the best 15 quarterbacks in the country, I think is going to be important because there is a part of this process where I still think people take for granted and underrate just how much Shador did the last two seasons, and having to replace that, or at least, be under the leadership of somebody else, is not going to be easy
Yeah.
after having that steady hand on the wheel for a consistent period of time. So we'll see how that process goes. A lot of that, I think, strictly by nature, really, of the game today and how spread out things are. And yeah, I know that they want to run the ball a little bit more allegedly, but um, it's going to come down, a lot of it will, on how well they can get their quarterbacks playing.
Yeah, and honestly, this might be the best offensive line coach Prime has had as well. That's going to be a big
Yep.
part of it. Just real
Knock
quick,
on wood.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just real quick, I mean, Jordan Seaton obviously is getting a lot of love. Phil Steele, who, one of the more respected, preview magazines out there, he had Xavier Hill, first team all conference, and Jordan Seaton second team. So you can debate that or not, but I mean, the point is, this is one of the leading college football analysts. He sees two all conference type linemen for the Buffs, and
Crazy
when was the
big.
last time they had one?
Yeah.
Let alone two. So that's going to be a big deal. It's how that line, and that doesn't even include a Zy Chrysler, who I think that people are expecting some things from after playing fairly well at Illinois, and so that's going to help quite a bit. And so, yeah, certainly that's going to make the quarterbacks look better. Real quick, Matt, before we get out of here, the Buffs have been busy 2026 recruiting.
Yeah.
They've landed a bunch of guys here in July. I don't know what the total number is. I know they're up to nine, recruits for this season, and Coach Hart's been busy because he's landed three linebackers in July.
Yeah, and look, I mean, that's a position that you and I have talked about. At this stage, had they brought in somebody maybe their first year, or at some point, maybe even at the tail end of that first year, that they were high on as a developmental piece, now would be the time where they would really be emerging. But they haven't been able to do that.
Yeah,
The younger guys they brought in, there were a couple of them early. They really haven't hit like that. It's really been mostly transfers. So I think as a total team shift, you're going to see them start to go more of the developmental route, because now that money is what it is in college football and they can't compete at the upper echelon, I think they've realized that they might just end up spinning their tires with some of these transfers when they may just have to invest into younger players.
yeah.
Does that mean they go through a bit of a transition period? Probably. I don't know what that ends up looking like, but I was glad to see it. I mean, they snagged the four-star linebacker, was his name Rodney something or other, and
Rodney Colton.
yeah, and you and I have talked about this. Landing freshmen for next year right now doesn't really get the juices going, because you've got to prove it to those guys before, those guys can just up and leave, or at least change their commitment or what have you. But hard to get excited about that. Would love to have a guy like that on this year's team. Hopefully Mantrez Walker can maybe, produce a little bit as a freshman. I think they'll certainly need some help at some point there. That's my
Yeah,
expectation. So we'll see how it goes. But yes, good to see that they have picked up a few seemingly intriguing pieces at positions of need.
yeah. You're right though. It would have been nice to see a Rodney Colton type um, that signed 2 years ago, or
Yeah,
even this last year. Like, I'd love to have Rodney Colton being a redshirt this year, and taking over next year. Because obviously the two linebackers we're projecting right now are seniors, and
yeah,
really you go 3, 4 deep, and you're still looking at seniors. So yeah, but look, you got to start somewhere, and they're getting some
yeah.
guys here. They got a couple corners and things like that. So an offensive lineman that was a big pickup. So they're doing some things in the 2026 recruiting class, and that's a good thing. So hats off to Coach Hart, Coach Prime, because they're getting that 26 class going.
Yeah, and look, Coach Prime said, what was it, 40, 40, 20, about his how he wants everything, 40%, what was it, transfers?
40% grad transfers,
That's
40%
right.
transfers, and then 20% high school.
That's it. So you figure they're probably pretty close to done high school wise, maybe a few more guys.
Yeah, you would think so. I gotta say shout out to Corey Phillips as well, because his staff is the one that leads all that recruiting. But yeah, high school wise, I mean, I think they're at nine. I would think they could get up to close to a dozen or 15. So
Okay.
they're probably not quite done, but yeah, because they're gonna lose a lot of guys off this year too.
Yep.
So
Yep.
one last thing, one other note of a CU player that was busy, Gage Goldberg was in the ring with his father the other day. His
I saw
father's
that.
retirement. I gotta tell you, I don't know what to expect out of Gage. He's a walk-on linebacker, but he looked ripped. He looked ready to go. He looked like what you want your linebacker to look like, right?
Yeah, I put a little post out there. Cool to see, Goldberg with his last match or whatever. I'm not a wrestling guy, admittedly. Never
Yeah,
have been. Didn't
right.
grow up that way. But, occasionally I've caught it, and certainly Goldberg is, incredibly popular, and has been for a very long time. The one really cool part about him though, and I think a lot of people don't know it and maybe have seen him, pictured on the sidelines. He's at nearly every game, including away games. And when
Yeah,
he's down there on the sideline, it's like he's part of the team. Like this
yeah.
guy lives and dies with what's happening out there.
Hmm.
And he's always great with the fans. Anybody who comes up to him, he's always incredibly courteous and kind. And that's been cool to see him down there. I mean, it's a little bizarre sometimes only because it's like, hey, we're in Tucson. There's nobody else here except for media. But it's
Yeah,
like, God, there's Goldberg and he's going
right.
crazy for
Yeah.
CU. So it's cool to see. He's definitely a ride or die dad and fan.
Yeah, and I did a Zoom with the two of them, after Gage committed, and I've had a chance to chat with Bill Goldberg a few times in person when he's come in. Great guy,
Yeah.
and he was actually at the open practice at DPS Stadium last year as well,
Yeah, no, he doesn't
and
miss anything. No,
he
he's
doesn't miss
he's
anything.
pretty great. Yeah.
And I will say one of the coolest things about him as a dad is he's very realistic about his son's position.
Yeah.
And last year, every time I talked to him, he's like, "Hey man, I just want him to keep getting better, and
Yeah.
whatever time he can get on the field, great. If you're a special teamer, go get it." He's not one of those dads that's like upset his son's not playing or starting things like that. He knows the process to go through. And look, he's a Coach Prime guy. He and Coach Prime have been friends, dating back to their Falcons days, and so he's all in on that. But yeah, um, I'm not a wrestling guy either. When I was a little kid, I was into that. But it was still cool to see, and it's kind of fun to see Gage out there as well.
Yeah, well, definitely, certainly. It's unique when it's
Yeah,
around Colorado football, and just cool to see because I think what really resonates with Mr. Goldberg is the old school nature that Coach Prime has and how he is raising
mhm,
young men. I think that's
yeah,
what he's really excited to be a champion of is the way that he's doing business in his program and the way that he helps out young men, and he's very passionate about that, and he takes it very, very seriously. So yes, he's realistic, but he's
yeah,
also in it to win it. So, yeah, very cool to see. Shout out to him. It makes me, even though I didn't really experience much of that because I wasn't a wrestling fan. Don't have the ties to it. Makes me feel old. Probably makes you feel
yeah,
really old, Brian.
yeah.
Eesh.
Thanks, appreciate that.
Yeah, no
On that
problem.
note, let's get the heck out of here. Matt and I'll be back next week. We're going to do a camp preview show next week. We'll kind of go through each position and kind of how we see it as fall camp starts. It's actually starting in less than 2 weeks, so we're going to get at it next week, and then in less than 2 weeks, Matt, we're going to be out in Boulder doing some press conferences and practices and all that. And so looking forward to that.
Absolutely. If you guys have any questions for the season preview or things you're thinking about for the whole season or anything like that, make sure you drop them in the comments, and Brian and I will take a little look see, and if there's anything good, we'll implement it into next week's show.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. And we'll see all you guys soon.